Hi everybody, welcome to A Course in Miracles Applied. Today's topic is called Practicing the Holy Instant. There's actually two parts to this. The second part is this little graph here. We're going to get to that. The first part is about how we can practice the Holy Instant. Basically, chapter 15 is called the Holy Instant, so it is all about it. Nevertheless, if you experience reading it, you will probably, or you might realize, wait a minute, I don't really know much more what the Holy Instant actually is than when I started reading it. That is because the Holy Instant is really beyond teaching, right? It can't be taught. It'll happen automatically once the framework or once the groundwork for the Holy Instant is set, then it'll happen. But we can't really practice it, even though this segment is called Practicing the Holy Spirit, the Holy Instant. And Jesus says that. So he says in chapter 15, section 2, the end of doubt, in the paragraph 5, he says, the Holy Instant has not yet happened to you. Yet it will, and you will recognize it with perfect certainty. No gift of God is recognized in any other way. You can practice the mechanics of the Holy Instant and will learn much from doing so. Yet its shining and glittering brilliance, which will literally blind you to this world by its own vision, you cannot supply. So, in one sense, Jesus says, you can practice the mechanics of the Holy Instant, right? But you cannot supply the actual thing. We can only prepare for it. We can prepare for the Holy Instant to come to us, but we cannot generate it. It is outside of our ability to generate just because it is part of the oneness of heaven. There's nothing we can do to add to that. It is there. It is present every second and every moment of the day in our lives. And we can't just say, oh, I want a Holy Instant. I mean, we could theoretically, right? Because it's our choice that we experience it or not. But how often, if we're really honest, how often do we experience it? How often do we experience its shining and glittering brilliance, which will literally blind us to this world? How often do we experience that? And I think the whole course moves toward that realization of how often we're not in this Holy Instant, how often we choose the unholy instant instead of the Holy Instant, right? So what I want to do now is, just from my own experience, nail down that moment when we prepare for the Holy Instant. Again, the rest is not up to us. The rest will come to us once the fear has lessened enough that we can actually accept it. Turn the lights on. Right? It's a matter of us accepting the Holy Instant, because it is there for us to accept. So, and it says, start now to practice your little part in separating out the Holy Instant. You will receive very specific instructions as you go along. So how do we do this? How do we practice separating out the Holy Instant without getting lost in I want to say, theoretical, metaphysical thoughts, right? How do we practically, every moment of the day, how are we able to practice this in a practical manner without going into the metaphysics and talking ourselves into perhaps having an experience when we don't really have it? So how I think it works is this. I have to move to another quote for a second and bring it in. So the Course says in chapter 12, section 3, paragraph 7, he says, if only the loving thoughts of God's Son are the world's reality, the real world must be in his mind. Okay, so the only the loving thoughts that we have are the world's reality. So love is the world's only reality, not because love is in the world. There is no love in the world. Right? That is the ego's bread and butter, that it says you can find love in the world. There is no love outside of our mind. Right? It says, Jesus says, love, or the loving thoughts of God's Son, are the world's only reality. Right? The real world must be in his mind. So love is in our mind. When we decide for the Holy Spirit, love is in our mind. We cannot but see love everywhere in the world. The love in our mind is the world's only reality. And the love in our mind will automatically be extended outward so that we see it everywhere. Right? The love in our mind is extended outward so we see only that love. Now that, again, our experience of that is probably, when we're really honest with ourselves, that we don't experience that love. That we experience anything but that, right? That we once in a while we get an inkling of the love. And I don't mean the love that is between two people or friends. You know, we have friends, or we have a course group and we love people in the course group. This is something completely beyond anything that we can grasp here, that love, right? It fills everything within us, and it fills everything outside of us. There's nothing that is outside of this love. The moment we believe we love the course students and we don't like soldiers in a war, whoever they are, whatever we think we love the course students is not love, right? It's special love. So the love in our mind that is the only reality in this world is not the love that we think it is. So we have to already have a little bit of a questioning mind that says, okay, what if the love that I think is love isn't really love? Maybe that's how I get to it, right? That's a good start. When Jesus says to learn this course requires the willingness to question every value that you hold, a big value is our value that we give love, right? What is love? And we think we know it. And Jesus says, you don't. You have no clue what love is. Love is oneness, right? And we can't grasp it. We can get an inkling once in a while, but that's still filtered through our distorted, disturbed mind, right? When we're with the ego. But so, back to the holy instant. So if love if the love in our mind is the only reality in this world. Let's say we're in a bar, right? We're having a drink with friends, or we're in a restaurant, or we're in a subway, or we're in a classroom with other students, or we're a teacher, or we are in a gathering of family members, or we're in an office meeting. We all have those situations where we're with a bunch of people. Some of them we don't know, some of them we like, some of them we don't like. Whatever it is, it's our daily lives, right? We're in our daily lives doing our thing. And there are situations, let's say we're in a supermarket. So we're in the supermarket. Whatever we feel, whatever we experience, whatever we think that isn't love is the block. It's a very simple statement. Whatever it is that isn't love is the block that blocks out love, that blots out the memory of God. So in any given moment during the day, I was roller skating the other night, and where you just go around in circles, and I realized, okay, I have to concentrate a little bit on the roller skating, but then I was aware of all the people in there, and I was aware that I didn't feel love towards them, I didn't feel any opposition either, not that I was aware of, but I realized that when love isn't the experience that we have, whatever we're experiencing at that moment must be the block. And sometimes we dive deep into the block and say, okay, this is because the sin and because of the separation, guilt, fear, attack on God, and all this stuff. But today we're going to just compact that into whatever is not love. And the Course says that, you have two emotions, love and fear. Whatever is not love is fear. And fear is always the accumulation of the unholy trinity, right? That Ken always talks about, sin, guilt, and fear. It's a combination of, or one of the three somehow. But if we don't experience love at any given moment, we must experience the block. And a lot of times we experience the block as quote unquote neutrality, right? We're kind of neutral, especially when we're busy with something. We don't feel a great opposition or great anger or great, upset, but we don't feel love either. We're kind of like doing our thing. Well, from the Course's perspective, that's really not possible. We must be either with the Holy Spirit, in which case we will experience some love on some level, or we're with the ego and we're denying the absolute terror that is the basis of this thought system. So, whenever we're in a situation, we're in a room with people, and we don't feel love for everybody that expands beyond that circle that we're in, includes the whole world, includes any political figure that we don't like usually, or anybody in the past, in the present, right? If we don't feel that, we must experience the block. And when Jesus talks about carving out the holy instant, I believe that's what he's talking about. He's talking about becoming aware of the block. Because we don't have to become aware of the love. Again, the love is beyond our learning. Once the fear lessens, love is there for us, right? We will experience it. But we can't experience it right now because we put this block between us and the awareness of love's presence, as the introduction says, right? So practicing the holy instant means not that we're trying to get to love somehow. If we're trying to get to love, that means we're not there, which means we don't want to be there. We want something else instead. We want whatever we are experiencing at every given moment, whatever we're experiencing, that's what we want. And we want that so that we don't experience love. So practicing the holy instant is becoming aware of that, whatever it is we're feeling right now, whatever it is we're experiencing right now, that isn't complete love, whatever that is the block. And the block is what prevents us from experiencing the holy instant. I think I said before that it's chapter 14 that is the holy instant, but it's chapter 15. I just want to go back to that quote from before. In The End of Doubt, chapter 15, section 2. When it says, you can practice the mechanics of the holy instant and will learn much from doing so, right? So, practicing the holy instant means nothing other than becoming aware of the block. Because the block is what is in between me and my full awareness of God's presence or the love's presence in my mind. So if I'm in the supermarket or in this group setting or anywhere at home watching TV, and I don't feel the love for everybody, I must feel when I close my eyes, when I turn off the sounds, and I go inward, whatever it is there that I'm feeling, that's the block. And that is what Jesus needs. That is carving out the holy instant, is to stop, look inward and see or look at what it is we're experiencing at this very moment. If it's fear, if it's any kind of upset, if it's boredom, whatever it is, all those experiences, all those emotions is really only just fear anyway, in all different shapes, right? So however we get to that block doesn't matter, but the crucial thing is for us to stop what we're doing. Even if we're roller skating in the ring, like over and over, we don't stop that. We can just become aware of what it is we're feeling. We're not feeling the love, which means we must experience the block. And I think the Course leads us to almost like touching it with our mind. Because that's what we bring to Jesus. That's what we look at with Jesus and say, I'm in the roller rink, I'm going around my circles, and I don't feel love for everybody. What I'm experiencing must be the block. And I put that block in place so that I don't experience the love that is the only reality at that very moment in this room. Because the love is in my mind. And if I don't experience that, I'm actively putting a block between myself and that love that includes everyone in this room. So practicing the holy instant is nothing more and nothing less than becoming aware of the block that I actively put in between myself and the love that is present at any given time. And this could be in any situation, 24/7. It can be while we brush our teeth, while we go grocery shopping, while we eat our breakfast, while we drive in the car. It doesn't matter. whenever we don't experience love, we must experience the block. And that is the core of the course, to get in touch with that, because it has been hidden from us, right? The ego, this part in our mind that wants to keep the separation going, is hiding. We're hiding this block from our awareness. We think the block is somewhere outside and other people are responsible for it, right? But it is within our mind. And practicing the holy instant is to get in touch with that block. And we touch it, like it becomes a little bit structured, a little bit three-dimensional when we realize we're just looking at it and we're kind of becoming aware of that block in our mind. That's the mind training that gets us to that point where we can get in touch with it. We don't need to train ourselves to experience love. It makes no sense at all, because we are love. There's nothing for us to learn. Love is beyond learning, beyond teaching, beyond experience. All we need to do is remove the block. So what we do is, in every given moment when we're not in peace, not in full peace, we become aware of what we are experiencing. Whatever that is, that's the block, and that is what we look at. And we spend a couple of seconds on it, or as I did, 20 minutes going around the circles in the rink, just being aware of that block, that I don't love the people there. Which means I must have decided for the block instead of for the love that is there. And that's all. And we ask Jesus for help, and that's it. Right? There's nothing beyond that point. The holy instant does not need anything in addition to it. In fact, if we add anything to that, we're always adding the ego. If we're trying to change it so that we feel the love, that is the ego. The Holy Spirit would never do that, because there's no need for it. The ego gives us crazy demands, right? Let me see if I find that. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Okay. Anyway, so that is practicing the Holy Spirit, practicing the Holy Instant. And now we're getting to the second part. And that is the core of the course. And I want to talk to you about this graph, this little drawing. I had this idea of this rocket. So basically, the rocket is our work with the course, right? So the course says in chapter 13, section 2, paragraph 7, it says, this course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace. Very clear, right? Its goal for us is happiness and peace. And this section now could be called, what is the course's goal for us? And it has an immediate connection to the holy instant. But what is the course's goal for us? This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace, right? That's the goal, the end goal. And I put it up here. Light and peace and joy, right? Lesson 93, light and peace and joy abide in you, abide in me, right? So that's the destination. The destination of our process with the course is that we reach this point of light and peace and joy. Many, many beautiful passages in the Course describe that point. One of them is in chapter 29, section 5. It says, "The still infinity of endless peace surrounds you gently in its soft embrace, so strong and quiet, tranquil in the might of its creator. Nothing can intrude upon the sacred Son of God within." Right? This is the end goal of the Course. The lawns of heaven. Just before the heaven's gate. And then there's another one that says in chapter 23, section 1, it says, "The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there's conflict, for a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness." So the memory of God dawns or comes to the quiet mind. So the end goal of the Course for us is to be at peace, in joy, and in the light. That is the end goal. And because there are so many beautiful passages in the Course about that, we tend to forget that we can't just get there. If you want to go to a planet which is called light, peace, and joy, which is in our mind, and the Course is the rocket that gets us there, right? And that rocket has a couple of components to it, right? You have a roadmap, a GPS in a way. The Course provides that roadmap. It says, if you do the mind training, you learn what forgiveness is, you learn how to look at the ego, and you do everything that Jesus says in one way, shape, or form, however we can do it at that very moment. Eventually, we will get to this point where we are at peace, right? That's the roadmap. And then we learn within the Course, we learn principles, techniques, and skills, right? It's the manual for teachers. It's a manual for teachers, right? It's a workbook. It's not a sit down and do nothing book. It's a workbook, right? We work on it. And we learn principles, techniques, and skills. We learn all about the ego. We learn about sin. We learn about our belief in guilt. We learn about fear. We learn about projection, perception, forgiveness, the miracle, what the Holy Spirit is. And we learn this thought system that Jesus lays bare, right? We learn all about the ego, and we learn all about the Holy Spirit's thought system. It's a big chunk of the Course is basically to tell us, hey, listen, you have a split mind and you have two choices. One is the Holy Spirit and one is the ego, right? So it teaches us principles, techniques, and skills that have to do with our mind, right? If the memory of God comes to a quiet mind, we need to somehow get from where we are right now in this conflicted ego mind to light, peace, and joy, and the Course tells us what to do. Right? Makes sense. Now, I don't think, just from my own experience, that this is well, in one sense, the light, peace, and joy obviously is the end goal. But how do we get there? Right? And what does the Course do to get us there? And that's the crucial part of this whole equation. Is the Course leads us to a point, and that is the very, very practical and a lot of times painful part of our journey, And Jesus talks about that a lot throughout the course. And there's one word for it that kind of encapsulates it the best. Sorry. And that word is desire. Without our desire to do all this and to get off the ground and reach light, peace, and joy, none of this matters. Right? Jesus cannot give us this desire. We must get to a point within ourselves where we access that desire to go home. Jesus says in chapter 15, section 4, he says, "Your practice must therefore rest upon your willingness to let all littleness go," which means look at the ego in all its glory, right? "The instant in which magnitude dawns upon you is but as far away as your desire for it. As long as you desire it not and cherish littleness instead, by so much is it far from you. By so much as you want it will bring it nearer." Will you bring it nearer? So, what Jesus wants in this course, and it's so clear to me that he has to get us to a point where we want to go home. Where even though there is still fear that we're facing because we're so afraid of that goal, right? We're afraid of light, peace, and joy. Even though that's still there, the desire to go home, even if it's ever so slightly, it's stronger. The moment the desire to go home is stronger than the fear that wants to keep us here, that's when this rocket starts lifting off. And a good chunk of the course, I believe, is there so that Jesus leads us to this desire, to this wish to return home. Without that, we will not make it through the ego. We will stop somewhere and then choose another path because it's too hard, right? The desire to go home is the fuel that gets the rocket going, and it's going up to the stars, and it lands just short of heaven. But without the fuel, which is our desire, nothing is going to happen. And there's always this opposing force, whether we acknowledge it or not, which is the fear of this goal, right? Jesus tells us many, many times, and this channel is basically focused on realizing how big this fear is that we have. That we can't just go like that. We can't just say love and peace and joy abide in me and we're there. If we would, we would, right? If it would be so easy, we would do it. And Jesus leads us in the course to this desire. It uncovers, I think we uncover this desire here. We go through this whole thing, we learn about all this stuff, and we end up realizing how much we want to go home. And that is the only goal. That is the only thing Jesus can do for us, right? He says at some point, motivation is the only thing you can give a student. That the student realizes this need for change. We need to go. We need to go back home. And he says that in chapter 1. Chapter 1. You who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. No learning is acquired by anyone unless he wants to learn it and believes in some way that he needs it. So we will not go through with this course. We will not go through the 4 obstacles if we don't have this desire to go through it. And to say to Jesus, you know what, I'm really scared of this, but I want to go home. So, in one sense, the course leads us to this desire, which means there must be a painful place. The desire isn't just like, oh yeah, I want to go for a stroll in the summer in the park. That's not what desire is. The desire to go home means I don't want the ego anymore, at least not 100%, because it is too painful. If we don't realize how painful the ego is, we will not want to go home. If we still believe the world can give us things, right, that lessens our desire to go home. The only thing that is the fuel of the rocket is our wish to return home. And Jesus basically says, in order for you to get to this desire within you, that is within you, deep within you, right? we will explore what you think you want. That's why lesson 185 is there. It's the only reason that lesson is there. It says the lesson's header is, I want the peace of God. And the first sentence is, to say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. Right? To mean the words, I want the peace of God, is what gets us there. And Jesus says, okay, I'm going to explore with you all the times where you say you want the peace of God, but you don't mean it. We have to get through those. If you keep believing that you want to go home or you want to have an experience of this light and peace and joy, but you don't have it, we need to get to the bottom of it. Why do you believe, if this is there always, right? If the holy instant is but one instant away right now in the present moment, there is no barrier other than the block that we put in between us and the holy instant. So the holy instant in which we experience light, peace, and joy on a massive scale is right now. There's no time delay or anything like that, except for the block that we put in between, right? And the block that we put in between is our wish not to experience it. It's our desire not to experience it. So Jesus tells us, listen, if love is the only reality in this world, and you're roller skating in a roller rink and you don't experience the love that is there because it's in your mind, it is because you don't want it. You do not want this because you're too afraid of it. And we have to address that. Right? So we address that each time we're not at peace, each time we're not experiencing love for everyone. We want the block that is the absence of love and the absence of peace. We want that because our desire is still bigger to experience the block than what's behind it, which is the holy instant, this magnificent moment of complete love and peace. And if we don't experience that, it's because we don't desire it. So in order for us to get to that point where we desire the holy instant fully, we first must go through all the ways we're denying it. Right? We say, I want to love everybody, but I don't, which means I don't want to love everybody because I'm too afraid of love. So in order for us to get to this desire to go home, Jesus explains in the Course all the ways we are pretending that we want to go home, or we want to feel that love and that peace, but we're not quite there yet. Right? We say we want the love that is all around us, and we don't experience it. We say, I'm not a body, I'm free, but I don't experience that. I don't have this uplifting light experience that connects me with the whole universe. Why is that? Because our desire for the ego is still bigger than our desire to be back with God. Our desire for separation is bigger than our desire for God. And part of the Course is for Jesus to lead us to that point where we can acknowledge that and say, if I'm not at peace, if I don't experience the holy instant, it must be because I don't desire it. I don't want it. I prefer this individual small existence within the ego thought system. Right? Your practice must therefore rest upon your willingness to let all littleness go. The instant in which magnitude dawns upon you is but as far away as your desire for it. Magnitude cannot dawn within our mind if we don't want it. And Jesus says the way to get to this desire, I will lead you there, right? Jesus says, I cannot be the fuel of this rocket. You have to be the fuel of this rocket. Because I am already experiencing love and peace, Jesus says, but you're not. So let me show you how to get there, and how you get there is to realize that you desire anything but this. And the proof of that is that you don't have it. Whatever we want, whatever we desire, we have. And whatever we have, whatever we experience is what we desire. Ember, what are you doing? My dog is desiring to have a nice, good girl. I guess she had to just rearrange her little bed. So the desire is the crucial part, and we get to the desire by recognizing all the ways we think we want peace, but we don't have it, which means we must desire something else more. If we're not experiencing the holy instant, that means we must desire whatever we're experiencing right now more than the holy instant. Because the desire is what lifts off the rocket and gets us to the peace. But without the desire, the whole, if we concentrate on the beautiful passages, that's beautiful, that has a certain draw to it, right? But it's not going to get us to the holy instant, at least not a permanent one. It gets us to some inkling of it, and then we think, oh, this is beautiful, and this is it. This is not it. Whatever we experience in this realm is still filtered through the experience of our body. I think once the body is no longer in awareness, because the block has been removed, our experience will be completely and utterly different. We'll have no comparable experiences within this world at all. Nothing. It's completely different. And then Jesus talks about, in chapter 1, lesson 182, I will be still an instant and go home. He addresses that desire, right? The whole lesson is about that. He says, this world you seem to live in is not home to you. And somewhere in your mind, you know that this is true, right? He wants to lead us to this place within us that has this deep desire to go home. A memory of home keeps haunting you as if there were a place that that called you to return, although you do not recognize the voice, nor what it is the voice reminds you of. Because we're so buried in the ego thought system, we only have this light inkling of what this is. Yet still you feel an alien here from somewhere all unknown. Nothing so definite that you could say with certainty you are an exile here. Just a persistent feeling, sometimes not more than a tiny throb, at other times hardly remembered, actively dismissed, but surely to return to mind again. That persistent feeling, that's the desire to go home. That is the desire to experience the holy instant. So, a couple of things I think are at work when we work with the Course. One is Jesus leading us to this desire, this fuel that pushes us to do this journey with him, because this isn't an easy journey, right? We can't just snap out of it. We can't just say, I'm not a body, I'm not this personality, I'm not this story that I made up. We can't do it. Identification is salvation. We think our salvation depends on identification with this figure. And this identification is what we need to look at, right? The identification is the block. We're identified with this body. That is the block. And the holy instant requires for us to look at the block with Jesus. Say, I'm so identified with the body, I don't even know what else there is. That is a very honest statement that Jesus can actually work with. If you say to Jesus, I'm not a body, I'm free, that's the end of the journey. That's here. He can't do anything with that. He can't help you. He can't help us if we insist that we're already there, right? He picks us up where we are, but we have to recognize, okay, this is where I am right now at this very moment in time. My desire to go home is still less than the fear of going back. The fear of God is still bigger than my desire to go back home. That is the most honest statement we can make. And that is what gets us to that point. That honesty within ourselves is what uncovers that desire. And it's a painful process. I mean, I'm speaking of my own experiences. The desire to go home is not a happy place, right? There's happy moments, don't get me wrong, right? When that desire meets the love of Jesus and you're like, I can make it, right? I can be on my way and it'll be fine and everything will be great in the end. The end is certain, right? But in order to get to that point where we desire this going home more than the ego, we can't be just saying, yeah, sure. Why would we then even have done it? Right? Why are we even here? Why do we believe we're here? We believe we're here because we believe identification with this world and the body is salvation. It is what saves us from certain death. That's why we can't just go back. The fear of going back is still bigger than our desire to get there. But, and then Jesus says, this desire, this little willingness, right? He says, you don't have to be perfect. This desire doesn't have to be 100%. The little desire that we have invites all of the Holy Spirit's might. And then we can move on and we look a little bit, we can look at the ego a little more, we get a little further, we develop a little bit more of a desire. Then we can look at some bigger items, right? That in turn gets us more into this realm of where we realize how much we really want to go home, which in turn will allow us to look at the ego some more. In the Manual for Teachers, section 4, I think it's the development of trust in the, I think it's stage 4, or stage 5, the 5th stage. He says he must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only what he really wants in every circumstance. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed. We must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only what we really want in every circumstance. What do we really want? And the honest answer is what moves us forward. What we really want is light, peace, and joy. But then we have made up something that we wanted more with the ego, which is separation, which leads to sin, guilt, and fear. And now that's what we seem to really want. And that blocks out the light, peace, and joy, right? So we have to look at the sin, guilt, and fear part, look at the ego thought system with Jesus or with the Holy Spirit next to us. And we do that each moment of the day when we just become aware of our thoughts and we realize I'm not feeling love for everyone, I'm not feeling at peace, I'm not feeling joyful, right? What I'm feeling is the block, and the block's purpose is to block out the joy. The purpose of the block is to block out. That's what block is, right? It blocks out light, peace, and joy from our awareness. And we get through that block when we look at it with the Holy Spirit or Jesus. And when we go back to the beginning of the segment, when Jesus says, you can practice the mechanics of the holy instant and will learn much from doing so. The mechanics of the holy instant are to become aware of the block that is there when we don't experience love. Yet it's shining and glittering brilliance, which will literally blind you to this world by its own vision you cannot supply. Right? Beyond our looking at the block with Jesus, that is the end of our work. We don't supply the love, we don't supply the peace, we don't supply the joy. This will dawn on our mind once we have looked at the block with Jesus and realized there's nothing there. Right? There's nothing there. The love is the only reality in this world, which is the love in our mind, which means the block is not real. but we gave it so much power, we gave it so much reality, that in order for us to realize it's nothing, we first have to realize how much we believe it's something. It saves us from this wrathful God, we believe, right? That's why it's important to look at it with Jesus and not deny it and not say, oh no, this is an illusion. If we would believe it's an illusion, we would be there right now. The fact that we're not experiencing a joy that is not of this world, a peace that is beyond understanding, and a light that changes everything into love. We don't want it. We're not there. We think the ego is real. Right? If we don't experience this, we believe the ego is fully real and is there to protect us from this. And that is what we do when we practice the Holy Instant, is to look at the ego in all its facets. Whenever we're not in this state of mind, which is 99% of the time, we experience the block to the awareness of love's presence within us. And that's what we look at with Jesus. And that is what practicing the Holy Instant really means. I'm just going to read this one paragraph as a closing. I read two lines of that already, but I'm going to read the whole paragraph, which is chapter 15, section 4. It says, your practice must therefore rest upon your willingness to let all littleness go. The instant in which magnitude dawns upon you is but as far away as your desire for it. As long as you desire it not and cherish littleness instead, by so much is it far from you. By so much as you want it, will you bring it nearer. Think not that you can find salvation in your own way and have it. Give over every plan you have made for your salvation in exchange for God's. His plan will content you, and nothing else can bring you peace. For peace is of God and no one beside him. Thanks so much for watching.